You set a strict goal, like waking up at 5 a.m. to train. But when the time actually comes, your hand slams the snooze button, and you collapse right back into bed. Culture tells us that failing to get out of bed is a character flaw. We assume that discipline is a moral virtue, or maybe a personality trait you either inherit or you don't. Biologically, willpower is a highly finite resource. It lives in your prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for conscious decision-making. Every time you force yourself to do something difficult, you burn through that energy, and the tank rapidly depletes. Compare that rapid drain to the people who seem to possess a terrifying level of consistency. They execute brutal routines, like running up a mountain in the rain before dawn, without showing a single sign of fatigue. If willpower constantly runs out, relying on it to achieve long-term goals guarantees failure. To build unshakable consistency, you have to bypass the prefrontal cortex entirely. Conscious decision-making is metabolically expensive. Because the prefrontal cortex burns so many calories, the human brain is biologically wired to avoid using it. The engine behind extreme consistency is a different structure, the basal ganglia. This deep brain cluster operates as your central automation center. When a behavior moves from the high-energy cortex down into the low-energy basal ganglia, the action becomes hardwired. This transfer of control is habituation. Getting a new behavior to make that journey takes heavy lifting. It requires an immense amount of activation energy before the action finally becomes automated. Curious. This creates a biological hurdle. To survive that high-friction period before automation takes over, your brain needs a specific chemical fuel. Building elite habits isn't a matter of ignoring friction. It requires acquiring the exact neurochemical fuel needed to blast through the transition phase. That fuel is dopamine. Popular culture incorrectly calls it the pleasure chemical. This chart shows dopamine's actual behavior. It spikes dramatically during pursuit, then drops steeply the moment the reward is obtained. But zooming out to a modern adult's baseline, endless scrolling and junk food artificially spike dopamine all day. That original pursuit spike now looks tiny. When your baseline is constantly elevated by cheap digital rewards, ordinary, difficult tasks simply cannot trigger enough dopamine to motivate you to take action. The first rewiring protocol is lowering that baseline. By intentionally starving yourself of cheap stimulation through dopamine fasting, ordinary, high-effort tasks become chemically appealing again. The second protocol is temptation bundling. You tie a high-friction necessary task directly to an immediate, baseline-appropriate reward to generate the motivation required to start. The third protocol relies on environmental design. By placing physical barriers between yourself and cheap distractions, you increase the activation energy required to waste time. Absolute consistency comes from artificially engineering your neurochemistry so that you biologically crave the hard work. When you step away from the microscopic neurochemistry and look at daily life, a clear picture emerges. That intensely focused person you admire is not suffering more than you are, and they are not trying harder. By conditioning their biology and engineering their environment, doing the right thing has become their path of least resistance. Stop treating a lack of motivation as a character flaw. Instead, treat your behavior as a mechanical engineering problem to be solved. Mastering your neurochemistry gives you back your autonomy. It takes the daily struggle of taking action and turns it into an automated reality.